I'm Angel from Sustainability team at Invest Hong Kong, and this is my honor to be your MC for today's event. Before we dive in, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules to enhance your experience. Please note that this event will be recorded and be available on HKGFA YouTube channel, and the certificate of your attendance for today's event will be shared with you after the event. And in the following sections, we are privileged to hear from esteemed speakers across different views from finance, infrastructure, investment, and professional services. They will share their valuable insight and their experience on how to explore the green finance opportunities in Hong Kong. Without further ado, may I invite Ms. Janet Lee, the Deputy Secretary General of HKGFA, to deliver her opening remarks. Ms. Lee, please.
Thank you, Angel, and everybody who is here today. I know that there are a number of events, sustainable finance events that are going on, and we're very grateful to have you here to join us and to collaborate with Invest Hong Kong as well as ADB. I just wanted to give some background and context to this report. It's led by the Hong Kong Green Finance Association's Product and Innovation Green Tech Workstream that's co-chaired by Chris from AECOM and Angus from KPMG, whom we're very grateful for the dedication and support over the past year in terms of leading a lot of our members and contributions in driving some of these findings and insights. And whilst we are launching the report today, this is not the end, of the journey. It's really just the beginning. And, throughout the year, we will be engaging with the industry again in terms of trying to foster and build and synergize. A lot of discussions are had within different bureaus, government organizations, private sector, and around the region to really kind of accelerate, I guess, the financing that's needed to be deployed into green tech. I think in terms of the report itself, we have really come to this observation that whilst the Hong Kong government has done a lot to basically foster kind of like a green tech ecosystem through a number of financing mechanisms and incentives, the public sector financing alone is not enough. So we actually need to look at how we can crowd in private sector financing and to support this initiative. And so the report here is really to enhance the transparency, kind of identify the investment opportunities, and to enable this crowding in of private sector financing into early stage innovations and also into the more mature infrastructure type technologies. And to also look at how we can incentivize companies to be early adopters of this new technology. So later on today, you will hear Chris share some of these findings from the report. And then Angus will moderate a very esteemed group of panelists that will share kind of practical insights to how this financing can be accessed, some of the challenges. And I would really encourage everybody in the room to ask questions and participate and make it as interactive as possible so that you can also come out with some learnings and key takeaways. With that, I hope that within HKGFA, we can continue to be that bridge connector between government regulators, public and private sector to really kind of like accelerate the sustainable financing into tech investment opportunities. So with that, I'd like to pass the floor to Mr. Arnold Lau, the Associate Director General for Invest Hong Kong, and who are our co-hosts today. Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Rachel Thompson, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today marks an important gathering to explore the intersection of green finance and technology. I warmly welcome you all to this event, co-hosted by the Hong Kong Green Finance Association and Invest Hong Kong. Today we gather for a special occasion to explore the dynamic intersection of green finance and technology, focusing on how we can enhance financing opportunities across various green technology sectors. The global movement towards a low-carbon economy is accelerating rapidly. As the world unites to combat climate change, a significant shift toward a low-carbon economy is underway. In Hong Kong, one of our key focuses is deploying clean energy technologies across sectors. Recognizing that emissions primarily stem from buildings, transportations, and waste management. To align our city with the Paris Agreement, we must embrace green financing, foster product innovation, and integrate green technologies into the core of our business strategies. Hong Kong is committed to becoming a hub for green finance and technology. In the 2023-2024 budget, our Financial Secretary of the Hong Kong government announced our commitment to transforming into a green finance and green tech hub. Strategically positioned, Hong Kong is poised to seize the growing demand for green and low-carbon technology through our robust capital markets and access to green opportunities. Hong Kong government is investing heavily in climate change initiatives. As an international financial center, the Hong Kong government leads various initiatives to seamlessly integrate green finance and technology across sectors. Over the next 15 to 20 years, it is estimated that a substantial 240 billion Hong Kong dollars will be invested in climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts. Notable initiatives include the establishment of the 400 million Hong Kong dollars Green Tech Fund by the Environment and Ecology Bureau, and the 100 million Hong Kong dollars Cleaner Production Partnership Program by the Environmental Protection Department. The initiatives underscore our dedication to driving tangible impact to the real economy. Innovative financial instruments are at the forefront of our strategy to scale up operations. We are pioneering the adoption of fintech in the bond market and introducing innovative financial instruments to scale up operations and enhance transparency within our robust capital market. Our recent issuance of digital green bonds, totaling around 6 billion Hong Kong dollars, equivalent in various currencies under the government Green Bond Program, signifies our commitment to fostering sustainable financial practices. This milestone follows successful issuance of the world's first multi-tranche digitally native green bonds last year, marking a significant step forward, a greener future. Navigating future markets and technologies requires understanding their evolving dynamics. Understanding the evolving landscape of markets and technologies is crucial for financial stakeholders to navigate the future successfully. The launching report, which Chris will share in a later session, is a collaborative effort between Hong Kong Green Finance Association and esteemed business leaders across key industries in Hong Kong. It elucidates technology levers while offering finance practitioners clarity on scalable deployment options, presenting a comprehensive overview of market opportunities and technical maturity. This report empowers corporations and assists financial institutions in identifying sustainable financial technology solutions aligned with their business objectives. So in conclusion, together, we possess the power to accelerate positive change and foster sustainability in the real economy through our collective endeavors. I extend my gratitude for your presence today, and I wish each of you a day filled with success and fruitful insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lee and Mr. Lau, for your insightful message. Now, we would like to extend a warm welcome to Ms. Rachel Thompson, the ADB's Executive Director to the Asian Development Bank Board of Directors, to deliver the keynote speech. Ms. Thompson, please.
Well, thank you very much for the kind invitation to join you today. It's a great pleasure to be visiting Hong Kong again during the Asian Financial Forum and International Finance Week. And can I start by offering my congratulations on the report that you're launching this afternoon? I think it's a great example of the value that HKGFA brings to its members, to Hong Kong, and indeed to the region. As Angel mentioned by introduction, my name is Rachel Thompson. I represent 11 of ADB's 69 shareholder members. We are a multilateral development bank based, headquartered in Manila. We produced a climate report on Asia and Pacific last year, which highlighted that despite significant progress in recent years, the Asia-Pacific region still generates about half of global greenhouse gas emissions. And without enhanced effort, our region faces severe impacts and substantial economic losses. I think each of the sectors highlighted in the Green Tech report being launched this afternoon represents unique opportunities for innovation and investment that will be crucial as economies across the region transition to less carbon-intensive growth while meeting the development aspirations of their people. It's a transition in which we at ADB are also deeply invested. Last year, board colleagues and I approved an ambitious new roadmap to guide ADB's evolution and scale up our support on key challenges facing Asia and the Pacific, including accelerated efforts to combat climate change and expand the role of the private sector in development. The roadmap arose from a midterm review of our core corporate strategy, which we've creatively titled Strategy 2030. And as we execute on that plan, I'm confident there is more that ADB can do in partnership with Hong Kong-based businesses and HKGFA. Hong Kong, China and ADB have a rich heritage of cooperation. Hong Kong joined the bank in 1969, not long after it was established back in 1966. We now have 69 members, including 49 members from Asia and the Pacific and 20 outside of the region. As I said, I have the privilege of representing 11 of the bank's members on the board of directors. I'm not going to bore you by listing all of them, but that includes Hong Kong, China, as well as Australia, which is, of course, where I'm from, just in case the accent isn't quite thick enough for you to have worked that out. We have nearly 4,000 staff representing 60 nationalities, including some really outstanding Hong Kongers, across 45 offices, including our headquarters in Manila. That allows us to be close to clients and keeps the development needs of our region in clear view. In recognition of the large and growing finance needs of our clients, we, the board, approved a new capital adequacy framework in 2023 that we believe will unlock additional lending headroom of about $100 billion across the next 10 years. But we're conscious that even with that expansion, the demand across both the public and private sector for finance, particularly development finance, far outstrips supply. Last year, we also adopted a new organisational vision for ADB, solving challenges together, to reinforce to staff, shareholders and stakeholders that our ambition is to finance enduring transformational change on a regional scale through genuine partnership. And so I want to share with you 3 examples of how we're putting that into action. Through a partnership with Gulf Renewable Energy, ADB was able to work with a private sector client to provide climate financing in local currency at scale and to use blended finance to accelerate the take-up of renewable energy. By integrating battery energy storage systems with solar PV, the deal we concluded in 2024 ensures a more stable and reliable supply of renewable energy. It covers 12 renewable energy projects across Thailand, including the first large-scale solar BESS project in Southeast Asia. The financing structure incorporates the Thai baht equivalent of 260 million from ADB's own resources, 529 million through the syndication of other international financial institutions, including China Exim, and uses 31 million in blended concessional finance from ADB's Clean Technology Fund. We believe this will not only accelerate Thailand's energy transition, but will also provide an important demonstration effect. The Global Methane Pledge, launched at COP26 by the EU and the US, recognises, as does the Paris Agreement, the criticality of reducing methane emissions. Last year, the ADB board approved 100 million in finance for the Henan Tianlun gas group to reduce methane emissions and improve safety. The loan will finance the rehabilitation of 3,000 kilometres of gas pipeline and the installation of smart meters for 1 million households in 10 cities and counties across 5 Chinese provinces. The financed works will substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions while establishing a new benchmark for energy network rehabilitation and documentation of methane emissions reduction. Most importantly, it provides a model that we can replicate across the region. Now, if you've heard of ADB at all, you would know that we are best known as a sovereign lender, and indeed 90% of our current portfolio is sovereign lending. To that extent, we are, you could almost think of us as a mutual, given that most of our, certainly our 12-member board consists of representatives of shareholder governments. But we are privileged, I think, to enjoy relationships of trust with governments across the region that go back decades. And that gives us, I think, the ability to work with regional governments to undertake reforms or update regulations, particularly where the political economy of reform may be challenging. Possibly my favourite financing proposal that came to the ADB board last year is the first $500 million tranche of the Reducing Marine Debris program that will operationalise Indonesia's bold commitment to reduce plastic waste leakage into oceans by 70%. The program tackles the marine debris problem at its source, with finance linked to reforms that aim to improve health outcomes, livelihoods, and the environment for local communities. Importantly, the program offers opportunities for replicability, incorporating lessons learned and knowledge sharing in Southeast Asia and the Pacific, where waste management is a significant and growing challenge. Plastic marine debris impacts on fragile marine ecosystems and important sectors, such as tourism, fishing and public health. But it also points the way, I think, to future growth areas in Indonesia, including the transition to circular economy approaches in other industries. The program connects policy actions at the national and subnational level to improve the enabling environment and opportunities for private sector involvement going forward. And we certainly hope to be able to bring ADB financing to support non-sovereign clients in their participation and infiltration of this sector. So these projects collectively address, I think, key climate and sustainability challenges for the region through partnerships that combine finance and technology. Like HKGFA, ADB is committed to promoting investment in green technologies, enhancing climate resilience, and supporting sustainable finance initiatives. And I'm confident that that strong alignment in focus and mission is a solid basis for future collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson, for your very insightful and sharings. And we are now very excited to officially launch the report titled "The Green Technology Landscape in Hong Kong, Opportunities for Finance." This will be presented by Mr. Yoshii, the Workstream leader of Green Technology, Data and Infrastructure at HKGFA, and the VP and Global Director of Economics at AECOM Asia. Mr. Yoshii, please.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming out on this cold winter day. But I'm here to present our key findings and key highlights of the report we've been working on for about a year on the green technology landscape in Hong Kong. And I'd like to thank Angus, my partner here, also as the principal author. We've been working on this a year, and I was hoping at the end of today, we would strike it off our to-do list, and then Ginny says, well, this is just the beginning. We're going to have a lot more to do. So I guess my to-do list is going to get longer after all. So the when we started thinking about this this work stream and about doing some research and publications, we all understand that global warming is a big issue, and there's diminishing natural resources, and there's a rapid increase in demand, particularly in Asia, for power, for clean water, and all these things. And so the business as usual is not really working. And the decisions we make today are going to affect our children in the future. And so we need new technology. We need a new technology to solve the pain points that we're having in our economies, in our world. And so we started thinking about this. And the few questions we're asking ourselves is, what is green technology? It's a term that is very easy to say, but what is it? And what is all the manifestations of green technology? And then what's really relevant for Hong Kong about all of these different areas? And what are the financing needs for green technology? So we set some objectives very early on. And that was, we wanted to cover a large landscape of different technologies. So we don't go in much depth. We wanted to actually show the breadth of the industries and the technologies, and then think about what is the most suitable or what's the most opportunity here for Hong Kong and the GBA. We wanted to think about what's the technical maturity and the financing needs for these industries and these sectors. And we wanted to identify what is the investor requirements and what are the needs that they have. We wanted to incorporate some relatable case studies, and so Angus was really pushing this so we can all, instead of just a bunch of numbers, we could also have some real understanding and add in some case studies here. So we wanted to then come to some conclusions that we can recommend to government on how to move forward in terms of promoting green technologies. But the perspective, our organization is finance. So we wanted, this perspective here is, what is the opportunities for finance and how can finance leverage? We use finance to leverage and create these technologies and support companies. So in terms of the study, we did some research and we identified, worked with the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, and Green Development Institute to try to figure out what is green technology. We looked at the finance, fintech groups as well. So we developed 6 sectors and 34 subsectors. And there's really about energy, waste, construction technologies, and transportation, materials, and finally, we added a whole sector on fintech technologies. So 6 sectors, 34 technologies, and then we did a bunch of interviews and surveys with experts, as well as interviews, and also had them help with the case studies. One of the big directions and findings is understanding that different companies need different types of financing at different points in time. And it's not just companies, but entire sectors. Some at the very early stages are more in need of seed capital and venture capital. When you get into the middle development areas, these companies are now needing more blended finance as venture capital. And then you have the deployment industries that are in the deployment stage that need very large scale capital. So that's green finance or IPOs. But in our research we found in Hong Kong, the real pain point is in this middle area. And the middle area is where companies already have some sort of proof of concept, but they need to move up to scale. And that's where we're seeing where a lot of companies are kind of, not exactly stuck, but they're kind of in that area where they're really needing to move up into be able to finance their growth and get up to a large-scale deployment level. I don't have, the time today to go through 34 industries, so I'm not going to, bore you with that. But anyway, so I'm just going to talk about some of the highlights. So in the highlights, we looked at kind of overall what was the technical maturity of different industry sectors. And we find that in the early stages that there are things that like sustainable aviation, hydrogen, and what's interesting is sustainable fashion and textiles is actually in a very early stage here. And so these are areas that are needing, the early stage financing. We see in the middle, there's a large number of companies that are kind of in the middle stage of maturity. But what's interesting is something like nature-based solutions. There's actually quite a bit of companies that are just entering into proof of concept, and so there's a need for them to develop their maturity. But energy management, sustainable construction materials is also in there, food waste, and fintech. So these are the ones we think are very relevant for Hong Kong. And then there's the technologies that are more mature, and what they're needing is really large-scale deployment capital. So these are the things that we need large-scale deployment, but not just in Hong Kong, but we need it throughout the region. And this is where ADB comes in, where they're looking at very large-scale deployment in the entire region. We also looked at the aspect of the financing needs. So the financing needs are sometimes a little bit different. And so we looked at the financing needs for different kinds of companies. So sustainable design actually shows up as needing seed capital. And so this is design that's linked to digitalization. So digital technologies related to design. But where the big group in the middle is in this initial rounds of capital. So there's a lot of companies, a lot of industries that really need this type of capital for development. Where we're seeing some other more comprehensive financing is things like hydrogen. Hydrogen is something where it's a very early stage, but it's going to move very rapidly. Investors are thinking it's going to move very rapidly into deployment. And so it needs a very kind of comprehensive pathway of financing to go from initial technologies into very large-scale deployment. And then there's others, the large-scale deployment sectors are there. We asked them the experts questions about what was important considerations, and this was a kind of interesting where every sector was different. And so for energy, what's interesting is the investors wanted speed of deployment, which is, you don't think of energy as kind of a speedy industry, but it kind of is. I mean, so whoever captures the technology and brings that to deployment wins. On environment and waste, it's more about strong balance sheet. This tended to be big things like waste to energy, waste projects, kind of big capital things. So you needed a strong balance sheet for that. But buildings and construction was about carbon reduction and climate resilience. So this is companies that can help solve the embedded carbon challenge. So building and construction companies really need to focus on carbon reduction and how they can create buildings that are lower carbon. Transportation was more about key technologies and profitability. Manufacturing is about technology and new materials. So do they have a great new product, new technology that can really create a value for their investors? Fintech people are looking for a clear path to adoption and profitability. There's a lot of fintech out there, a lot of people trying different things, but do they have a clear path of adoption and profitability? We talked about what are the government policy recommendations, and so the first is really a programs that would work together with government, working together with the private sector. So this is really for co-investment. So this was interesting this morning. I was attending the ADB business briefing, and there was a big talk about how in the private sector, for every dollar they invest, they want to get $2.50 of private money to co-invest. And so that's a really great idea of leveraging, Hong Kong government investment into the private sector investment. There's a financing scheme for SMEs for green technology adoption. There's a lot of SMEs in Hong Kong. They have trouble accessing finance. So can we create programs that consolidate financing or group financing together for SMEs so they can join the green transition? We talked about a data platform for green technology. We're talking about procurement, government procurement. So, for example, low carbon cement. The government of Hong Kong purchases a huge amount of cement, and so can they in their specifications start specifying low carbon cement? That creates a market. That creates a need for technology. That creates opportunities. And so I think if the government itself got into really thought through how to procure through its own procurement, it could help drive the green technology transition. And finally, just this interdepartmental working group, knowing that you look at all these different areas and sectors, they're all different, and you have to get an intergovernmental group together to work together to help to solve these problems. So there is a great potential and need for green technology, and I think there is a great potential and need in Hong Kong. It's a vibrant place to do research and industry programs, but we do need to do more. We think the development of Northern Metropolis and reindustrialization will help to drive that, but we need a financing infrastructure. So we need the financing infrastructure in place to drive green technology. It's not just physical places. We need a financing infrastructure in order to drive the green technology transition, and as well as deployment capital throughout the region. So I'd like to thank a lot of different partners. I can't name them all here. So Angus and I were the primary authors, but certainly a lot of help from the Hong Kong GFA itself. But there's a lot of contributing authors as well, and researchers and people that answered surveys and things like that. And I'd like to thank all of them for their contributions to make this report a success. So that's it. Please go ahead and look at the report yourself. And as we said, this is not the end. This is kind of the beginning. So, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yoshii. Oh, please remain on stage. Because we are now open the floor for Q&A sessions and invite some questions regarding the report to Mr. Yoshii. So please grab the chance, and if you raise up your hands, I'll pass you the microphone for asking the questions.
Thank you. I haven't yet obviously read the report, but my question was more on the fintech side. What can be done more on the fintech space? Because obviously Hong Kong intends to be a global fintech center. So based on the feedback you got from the interviews, what more can be done?
Well, I think there's, Angus can also answer some of this as well. Hong Kong, we added that specifically because we're here in Hong Kong. And we do think, even though, it's not normally considered in other kind of definitions of green technology, we felt because Hong Kong is a center of finance and there's all these different areas where fintech can come in. We do think it can really help to provide more information and make financing easier. We can also spread the financing out to larger number of parties. There's a lot of questions about the data of green technology, and is it really, in green finance, and is it really correct, and is it documented well? There's a lot of, in green finance, there's a lot of documentation that needs to be done. can be very challenging. So we need that fintech technology to help solve some of the data requirements and things like that. So Angus, do you have any other thoughts there on
Yeah, thank you for the questions. In fact, the fintech session, we actually referenced the green fintech mapping done by SFC, and also FTA also is a big contributor. So we do not want to reinvent the wheel. Instead, we want to bring the synergies. Yeah, so that's number one. And we try to do the same for every sectors as well. So that's why we interview the GDI, we reference the WIPO as well. And for fintech specific, we are actually, the government and also the regulators are doing a lot of work. We have the POC recently, the schemes, and also the sandbox 3.20, 3.2, I think, yeah. So all these have been mentioned in the report. So, and all these actually is pointing to the same direction that we need more adoption. We need more adoption in the banks and case studies to be shared to the industry so that the other banks can also follow. I think that's the most important things for fintech sector.
Thank you. Do we still have more questions from the floor?
So what happens now? We have a roadmap. Who drives?
Yeah, I think what we're hoping to do is promote, particularly this issue of government co-financing, co-investing projects, because that would be very new for Hong Kong. So there are some funds, but are they quite set up correctly or not? So that's one area that I think we'd be pushing. Another area is on the SME front. Because we talked with a lot of SMEs, and they want to get involved, but to finance them, it's very costly. For a bank to give loans to a lot of SMEs is very costly. So can we do something there to help support the cost of financing, or bring them together to reduce the cost of financing? So those are kind of the two bigger initiatives that we're wanting to promote.
Maybe I'll go next. Thank you so much for bringing this piece of work to us, and I really look forward to reading the report. But maybe just a question in advance of that is, I see the title and I also follow your presentation, and whilst there are opportunities for finance, are there any thoughts or any observations that you come across in terms of challenges as well with providing financing towards some of these, including in the Hong Kong context, and how could those be addressed?
Well, I think the challenge with any kind of newer technology is risk, because you don't know if it's going to really work out, and you don't know, if you invest in a company and they develop a product, will that product sell? Or you don't know, will someone else come in and take that market share away from you? So there's risk, and that's why we are seeing a lot of companies that are they've gotten through the proof of concept stage, but they can't really get through to a larger scale investment and deployment, and so that's the pain point we're seeing. So that's where we're trying to think about, can there be some blended finance that comes in to help that risk, and just give a little bit of incentive on to overcome some of the risk profiles. So that's I think the biggest challenge I think we see right now is how do you manage the risk of these businesses, and can you come up with some solutions there? So Angus?
Yeah, and I think the challenge for different sectors are different. That's why we try to look into each subsectors from 3 angles: market opportunities, the technical maturities, and then the financial needs. For certain technology, the market is there, but maybe not technically strong enough in Hong Kong, so we want to bring them to Hong Kong. That may be the answer you can find from this report. And then where for some of the other technology, we have the technology, but we don't have enough demand. So we need to promote more to tell buyers or corporates that these technology actually strong enough, mature enough, ready to scale and commercially viable. They may not know them. And finally, some of the technology may be already very strong. The market is ready, but they don't have the money to scale. So I think for different technology, they may have different pain point, and we do not want to generalize them. Instead, we want to show which one have what kind of problem. Yeah, and you can imagine these kind of challenges, they are dynamic, right? So the challenge that we have last year may not be the same in the future. So that's why Jenny said this is not the end. And I know even in Invest Hong Kong, they are working on another paper in Green Tech. We absolutely welcome these kind of studies. We want the ecosystem to be richer. Yeah, everyone contributes. Yeah, and that's actually how we can all work together. And most importantly is, I think GFA will also try to bring some of this message to the government. Yeah, because if you read the policy address 2024, I try to read that every year, and because I'm a sustainability practitioner, every year I try to search keywords: green, climate, sustainability. And this year I think I find the most, right? So our CE is really, really supportive in climate and sustainability. So that's a good message, right? So we should take this opportunity collectively in association to advocate all these things, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yoshii, for the very informative presentation and all the great questions from the floor. So let's give a round of applause for his very great sharing. Following the report overview is chances for us to explore deeper how we can leverage Hong Kong's position to expand the financing opportunities across all these various green technology sectors. So to continue our conversation with all the esteemed speakers, we would like to invite them to the stage. So at first we have Ms. Carmen Zhang, the Head of Greater China Sustainable Investment Banking and Credit Agricole CIB, Mr. Greg Petit, Board Member of AMP Energy. Next, we have Mr. Jason Chen, the Chief Operating Officer and Managing Director at Global Partners. And last but not least, Mr. Justin Wu, Managing Director and Head of Climate Change Asia Pacific, Global Sustainability at HSBC. So this wonderful panel will be moderated by Mr. Angus Choi, Mr. Angus Choi, the Workstream Leader of Green Technology, Data and Infrastructure at Hong Kong GFA, and the Partner of ESG Advisory at KPMG China. Over to you, Angus.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you. First of all, welcome everyone to join this event. I hope you find this place very comfortable. Yeah. The purpose of this panel actually is twofold. Okay. Number one, I want to see how financial institutions identify and evaluate these opportunities in the green tech sectors. So that's number one. Yeah. And number two, we just heard from Chris, from our presenter, that we know that there are actually very good leading green tech and climate technology companies and technologies in Hong Kong. But do we know what's missing in the ecosystem? What do they need more? Yeah. So that's why today we have bankers from HSBC and also Credit Agricole, and also investors from Workstream Capital, yeah, Global Partners, and also from technology firm representative, Greg from AMPD, yeah, to share all these information with us, yeah. And of course, we also have you. So please, I just want to make sure that this panel will be interactive as much as possible. We are also with the floors, and please prepare your questions. We will try our best to answer your questions as well. So I would like to start with some numbers, right? If I can put it in this way, whatever report we read, we have one report today, right? And whichever conference we attend, and even podcasting we listen to, the dollar figures associated with climate is always trillions. I mean, we heard Arnold mention 400 something, right? Anyway, so, and I know that a lot of banks, they also set ambitions with on sustainable finance and climate, and also net zero as well. And that's why I would like to start with from Justin. Yeah, I know HSBC in 2020 also set an ambition to provide and facilitate $750 billion to $1 trillion of sustainable finance and investment by 2030. So it's a huge amount of money. Would you please share with us how HSBC come up with this number and what is the progress so far? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question, and congratulations on the report. I think it adds quite a bit to the conversation here in Hong Kong about the financing needs for different climate technologies and other things. There's a short answer to your question, which I can give and move on, but maybe I should give some context. But the short answer is that we've, as of the third quarter of 2024, because we haven't completed our annual disclosure yet, we've done about just over 370 billion of this number. But I think I just want to say that I know I see many of my colleagues from other banks in this room as well. We've all made similar commitments to 2030. I think they're somewhere in the range of 1 trillion, 2 trillion. Something like that, right? So those numbers, I think, were put out there. So that's the first point. The second one, I think, is, Angus, what you said, the important point about providing and facilitating, right? So without getting to a whole monologue about the role of a bank in the transition, but I think the facilitation point is important, right? So obviously, we are here to, as a bank, we have some parts of our organization does do investment, but as a bank, primarily, we're here to facilitate investment, right, from other areas. So this is all part of this ecosystem as well. So I think that's also just an important point about the role that the banks play in this. The final thing I'll say is that, yeah, I think any report we look at, we are talking about trillions, right? I think if I recall the numbers that we used in our net zero transition plan, I think it's something around the 40 trillion by 2030, over 100 trillion by 2050, right, to reach our net zero goals. And always half of that is in the Asia Pacific region. But actually, I think what's more important is not the number itself. We know the number is very big, and we all need to do a lot to it. I think one is that it's important to understand that this is not somehow additional investment. Right, because we get into discussions and everybody's like, "Oh, where are we going to find $100 trillion of additional investment?" Actually, it is the investment. It is the money that the economy needs to put into all sorts of economic activity over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Right, it has to be aligned towards transition in some way. So this is actually what we're going to be doing in the mainstream. The second point is actually also to break it down. I think this is also what the report is trying to do, right? Is to look at what are the sort of the mature technologies that we can scale and deploy today. So solar panels, batteries, electric grids, infrastructure, things like that. These are things that we can put money into now, and then we can deploy them and scale that as much as possible. And I think banks would usually find them, at least from a technology perspective, they're not risky to finance. But then there's the next generation technologies, which you've also highlighted, like hydrogen, carbon capture, or other things, which are actually not yet commercially viable. That's where we actually need, venture or other mechanisms to scale those technologies to bring them to a commercially sort of acceptable part, right? So I think to break that down, I think the report is doing that. I think it's an important add to the conversation. Otherwise, yeah, it is just about throwing big numbers around and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Justine. Yeah, you actually already mentioned the net zero transition plan that HSBC published in January 2024. That's around a year ago. And actually, I read that report as soon as you published that. That's really remarkable. And one thing I noticed that is that in the net zero transition plan, in your report, you also adopt a kind of a sector transition approach. So I think the first chapter was more about your ambition, and then the middle part, which is a very big chunk of it, is about sector by sector. What are the opportunities, right? And how big are they? And then finally is an implementation plan. So we all know now HKMA also want the banks in Hong Kong to set their net zero transition journey. Would you mind also share a little bit more on what do you think about the sector specific approach? And maybe if you can try to select pick one sector to illustrate as an example. And the reason why I ask this is very obvious, because our report is also using a sector-specific approach. So that's why, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I think the sector, so I think there's about 10 sectors in the report. The way I like to think about it is basically a picture, right? A roadmap or whatever you want to call it. Because again, it is very hard, I think, for people. I mean, most of us work in this industry, so maybe we understand it. But for others, it's very hard, or policymakers or more general investors, very difficult to understand actually what a net zero transition looks like, right? They hear the big numbers, they hear all the things that we need to do, but how do you do it, right? What happens? What is the sequence of things that need to take place, 1, 2, and 3? So I think the sector transition is that picture, right? So what do you do first? You know, with anything that you do, anything difficult that's multi-decadal that you try to tackle, you probably want to come up with some kind of tactical plan or implementation plan to do things in a sequence in some sort of way. You probably don't say, well, I just want to throw everything at it and see what happens, right? So for instance, one example, a simple example, let's take the aviation sector, right? And you have to think about it, all right, what do we do to actually start reducing emissions in the aviation sector? Sustainable aviation fuels, yes, we talk about that. Yes, we know we're going to need it. We're going to need to scale it and make it commercially viable. We need to, do the whole chicken and egg, the supply and demand thing. But it's probably not the first thing or not the easiest thing to do, right? If you're an airline today, if you want to reduce your emissions, there's probably some things you can do first. There's making your routes a bit more, organizing them a bit better so your fleet is much more efficient, right? Upgrading to some of the latest aircraft. There's a number, improving your ground operations, etc. All these things you can do to actually reduce your emissions by 10, 20% or something. And you maybe want to do that first before you say, okay, I'm going to put take the bigger risks, we put the money into like sustainable aviation fuels, which we need, but that's probably something that happens later, right? So I think a sector transition roadmap is trying to paint that picture. What are some of the things you need to do first, and what are some of the things that we need to do later, and what are the steps that we need to do to get to each one?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think you also mentioned a very key point about the technology may become mature in different stage. Yeah, I think in our report, we also mentioned that right now, a lot of sectors probably is more focusing on efficiency and electrification. But for aviation sector, probably it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it will become too heavy that the plane cannot fly, right? So the technology focus may be more on alternative fuel, and for some other sectors, maybe more focusing on carbon capture. So that actually shows the difference and the reason why we need a sector focus when we look at the technology itself. Yeah, thank you, Justin. Maybe moving on to Jason. Yeah, Gobi Partners is a leading pan-Asia focused venture capital. Actually, I know you have different investment themes, and two of them are sustainability and circularity. Yeah, so my question to you is, how do you assess the current landscape of green technology investments, and what trend are you seeing that excited you most?
Well, I guess before we go into that, maybe just for those who are not too familiar with Gobi Partners, we are a Pan-Asian venture capital firm. We have a relatively diversified footprint. So we have an office in China and Hong Kong to cover kind of China-Hong Kong investments. We also do headquarters. So we have a headquarter in KL, where we invest across ASEAN countries. And then more interesting part, we also have an office in Karachi, which is in, for those who don't know, it's in Pakistan. So we went into Pakistan in 2019, and at the moment raising our second fund there. So as you can see, we are quite diversified. So I think in terms of investment themes, we also kind of, moving in different directions due to the fact that, the ecosystem is very different in Pakistan versus, Hong Kong and China. I think, we manage about 1.6 billion of AUM at the moment. We have about 400 companies that we invested, 60 of which is in, what we term circular economy. So I think people talk about sustainability a lot. I like to use the term circular economy. We like to use the term circular economy because it encompasses a lot more than just sustainable investment. So I think maybe before I go into kind of the trends and whatnot, I can maybe share an observation about kind of, people talk about ESG, people talk about sustainability. I kind of want to distinguish these terms first. I mean, we also are a big proponent of ESG, but ESG for us is not an investment theme. So ESG for us is a risk management framework. So we adopted kind of something called United Nations Global Compact, which is a set of standards introduced by United Nations about 5-6 years ago, and we adopted that because one of our sovereign fund investors, we came to them, we wanted to manage money for them. They came back and said, we need you to adopt certain ESG standards so that you could manage risk. So I think, just coincidentally, we started doing that 6 years ago before kind of, it becomes a trend amongst buy-side asset management firms in using ESG as a concept. So for us, we've been using ESG as a way to evaluate risk, right? I mean, just very briefly, when you look at investment, we have negative lists, right? Before we even invest in a specific sector, we have certain sectors that we don't want to invest in. So that's a negative list. So these sectors are sectors that are not ESG friendly, but that also includes some of the sectors that investors don't want us to go into, like gambling, etc. Right? And then during the term sheet negotiation, we have standard clauses that we ask our portfolio companies to adopt. We have an ESG committee. Interestingly, we have 80 staff across, our footprint. And I think 30 people are in the task force, in our ESG task force. So ESG for us is not just something we talk about. It's actually permeated, across the entire organization. So people in investment team, people in the back office, people in the middle office, we all serve on this task force so that we collectively kind of instill these concepts into what we do on a day-to-day basis. And then I think recently we also introduced a framework for our portfolio companies to use software, right? A software that we ask people we invest in to use. It's $20 a month. I was just sharing with Angus, it's $20 a month. We ask the founders to install this software on their system so we can keep track. So we pay them, write them a check of $5. And all we're asking is, at least from an ESG standpoint, they need to monitor that and they need to install this software. So small steps that we're doing. So I think that's one observation is ESG is becoming increasingly important as a ESG, as a risk management framework, right? So it's not just an investment theme, but as a ESG framework for us to control risk. And then, I guess going into kind of more investment themes, for us, we've been, investing in circular economy. And that's encompasses a lot of technology that what we call kind of net zero, right? We always use the term net zero, but I think for us, we're moving from net zero to zero carbon, right? So there are a lot of ways to offset carbon footprint. There are technologies that do that. We have invested in these technologies, but now I think we are trying to move to zero carbon, right? When we talk about battery, when we talk about electrification, flights are actually not necessarily out of the picture. I mean, we do invest in a lot of eVTOL. So I think for those who don't know, eVTOL are basically vertical takeoff planes. For now, they only take a few people or maybe cargo, but we're investing heavily in these. We just closed a deal last year, late last year in China, where we invested in a company that will take cargo from one place to another, and soon they will be taking people as well, but maybe not as many as A350. But at least it's a start. So we're investing in a lot of technologies and companies which are targeting zero carbon. So I think that's one trend that we as VC, we're kind of standing at the forefront of this technology. And another theme that, another observation I want to share is, technology innovations itself has a lot of consequences when it comes to environment, right? So, we're advancing technology, but it's not necessarily always a good thing if you consider the environment, right? So take a very plain example, air conditioning, right? I mean, it's great, we feel cool, but it's taking a lot of heat from the buildings, but it uses a lot of energy, right? So there are ways for us to improve in when there are risks involved when we're introducing new technology, and for us VC, we're looking not just kind of skin surface deep. We're also looking at what is the impact of the technology that we're introducing, right? So air conditioning is just one old technology that we are, still tackling. So material science is one big sector where we are trying to tackle how to keep building cool without using aircon, for instance, right? And we're still tackling that. I mean, there's a lot of technology out there. There are a lot of companies we've seen, drawing from technologies from insects, and also animals. Actually, surprisingly, nature offers us a lot of solutions. So we were just looking at a company where they were looking at ants in the Sahara Desert and how ants cool themselves in the Sahara Desert. So that's one example. Another example is if you read the news, electric cars, right? We have electric cars. It's very common in Hong Kong and a lot of Teslas and also new brands. Very common also in China. Almost 20-30% of new cars are basically electric cars. But there's an oversupply of electric cars. So, all these brands, all these incentives are producing an oversupply of electric cars. So you can see electric cars kind of gathering dust in a yard. And so you're wasting a lot of the natural resources, right? The carbon, the nickel that go into the battery, and then you have the aluminum that goes into the car frames. So all these cars are going to waste. So how do we tackle that? Is there a better solution to tackle, the overabundance of EV cars? Another example under this kind of risk of technological advancement is AI, right? So we all using ChatGPT, to draft emails, put together presentations. We use them a lot at a VC firm. And what's driving that? Data centers. Data centers, rows and rows of computers and also NVIDIA chips are driving the AI innovation that is happening. But one fact from data center is at the moment we don't have enough electricity to drive all the AI innovations that are necessary in data centers. So US is going through a huge rethinking of how to supply electricity to these data centers, right? So you have all these solutions, including having data centers under the sea, right? So seawater can naturally cool the data centers, so they don't use as much energy in cooling. Cooling a data center is one of the largest draw of energy, or predicted to be one of the largest draw of energy, and have a lot of pressure on the power grid. There are other easier solutions that we have looked at. For example, you can build a data center close to the energy source. So instead of drawing energy from the electric grid, for instance, you can have solutions where you build a data center close to a natural gas depository. So instead of feeding energy into the power grid, you have excess energy that is going into the data center. So I think the theme is, you can have all these different solutions, but when you think of technological innovations, there are actually a lot of risks and a lot of issues that we actually created in order to solve different problems. So I think as VC, we're trying to go one step further and say, okay, we can make an impact to the society, right? We're investing in all these zero carbon technologies, but we also have a responsibility to invest in other solutions that could tackle the solutions that we provide for zero carbon. So I think that's the trend that we're seeing. We're trying to do one step further. VC is always trying to do good, do well, make an impact to the society. But in doing so, we also create other set of problems that we're trying to resolve. So maybe a little bit of observation there.
Wow, exciting. Thank you. So cooling technology, mobility, AI, new materials. Chris, I think we need to start again, right? Really, really great. I know that Greg actually is energy expert. But I need to keep you waiting for a while. Maybe you want to
you can chime in.
Yeah.
I mean, Greg is also a venture capitalist.
Come on. Okay, yeah. So maybe just before we move to comment, right? Can you just, because I know today we have a lot of entrepreneurs here, and as Chris mentioned in his presentation, we have a lot of good ideas, good startups, but they have difficulties to move to the next stage. Usually, it's the venture capital stage, right? So, can you give us some tips? Maybe 3 key advice, or one, maybe even one, right? to our entrepreneur, how can we get funding from VC in Hong Kong? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think if you asked me this 5 years ago, it's a very different answer. I think the past 2 years, it's been difficult, even in the VC world. Funding has dried up a little bit for a lot of the entrepreneurs. Environment has been, in a very high interest rate environment. And so it was tough. So I think if you ask me now, I think one of the key observations that I would, give to potential founders and entrepreneurs is that you need to be very pragmatic. So I think if you go to a VC firm 2-3 years ago, even with a grand idea and with a 100 billion TAM, people will give you money, right? People will fund you for a few years. But I think today, if you go to us, we would say we need the founders to be visionary. Of course, you have a great product, you have a great vision to execute. But I think more importantly, it's going back to kind of how you run a business, right? You need to be understandable. You need to have an understanding of the cost structure. You need to be conscious of hiring the right people to execute your sales strategy. So I think in a way, for us, it's being pragmatic with a business plan and also with a kind of 5-year, we would say a profitability plan, so that you can understand how you can achieve profitability in a few years' time. I mean, it's all based on assumptions, of course, but it's important for a founder. It's important for venture capitalists to understand, understand what the cost structures are, how to manage these costs, and so that they could expand their businesses. So I mean, just give you a couple of examples, right? I think we all know the Hong Kong government has banned the use of plastic lunch boxes and whatnot and cutlery. So a lot of people have moved to paper products, right? So we invested in a couple of companies that manufacture basically these paper products, paper cups, etc. One uses a compression technology so that they could use just paper, but they can compress it in a way so that there's no plastic layer kind of layering inside. So it's purely very hard paper, very durable. You can put it under fire and it won't burn. And then there's another company that uses recycled bio-waste. So I think in this case, they use tea leaves, which is free, right? So they basically get free tea leaves from all the China factories for free. So their only cost is logistics. Both offer very great products, right? But the difficulty in this business is scaling up, right? I think that was mentioned just now in our conversation. It's not just about starting a company, but it's about scaling up a business. So for them, given they sell physical products, they need to have a team of people to do sales. So they need to reach out to companies like Maxim or airlines like Cathay Pacific in order to adopt their products, right? Paper cups, paper lunch boxes, etc. They also need to ramp up their supply chain so that they can produce these paper cups at scale, so that they can be adopted across their customers. So it comes down to kind of how to manage a business. So you have a great technology, a great idea, but again, it comes down to how you run a business. So you need to hire the right people, have the right sales in order to be able to successful. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very much focused on kind of innovation at hand, but they may not be as focused on the traditional way of running a business. And I think after these couple years, these two must merge into a businessman who has a great idea, a great vision, but also able to execute or hire the right people to execute the plan. And it's as simple as hiring a salesperson, right, to reach out to Cathay or other customers in order to sell the product.
Thank you very much for your advice. Yeah, track record, execution, right? So I think that's the same for banks as well, right? we do financing. And Carmen, we just spoke about the private market. How about the public market, the capital market? We are actually leading capital markets in Asia, in particular for green finance market. What's your view on our current landscape, the green tech development landscape? Yeah.
Sure. So I'm from the Sustainable Investment Banking team from Crédit Agricole. I'm in charge of the bank's North Asia business in green finance. So I'll be giving a more complementary view compared to my fellow panelists. So the market basically for the international capital markets, when we look at green bond and green loan or other sustainability linked structure, last year we the new issuance and lending side, the volumes is around 1.45 trillion euro. So it is. I was trying to match with Justin's number, and I'm like, okay, we're a bit hopeless. But we started out this market back in 2014 with 4 banks, Crédit Agricole included, co-drafting the green bond principle. So we are growing, right, to a really sizable and mainstream market, and we'll continue to do so. But some feature to share with you, like so far in the green bond markets, the use of proceeds, like the project type, is quite concentrated in renewable energy, in more mature type of, even within renewable energy, is the more mature type of technology, like solar and wind, like EV energy storage, green building. But for less, like more sophisticated or more emerging type of technology, like biofuels, waste to energy, carbon capture, blue and green hydrogen, for these type of more emerging technology are still a minority to be supported by like the more mainstream institutional investors. And we think, first of all, because usually it would take a lot of expertise in understanding this technology, especially when greenwashing is quite an important risk for banks and investors these days. Secondly, I think the taxonomies that are, taxonomy is quite a big topic for our market these days, with Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe all launching their own taxonomies. For taxonomies, is usually a catch-up game, right? So we have this technology and then we try to include it. So usually for this emerging technology, either they're not included in our existing taxonomy, or that even if it's included, it's not very comprehensively like capturing the current state of, the current status of the technology, so that it can fulfill the objective of, really channeling the capital flow to this new technology. So all that goes to the key message for me is that this green finance market, it is quite established. So we have principles. We are a sizable market with trillion like annual new issuance size. However, it is still developing. And we, as banks and investors, I think first we cannot only take the compliance mindset. We have to, when we make a certain investment or lending to a green tech company, we have to make sure that it is aligned with the taxonomy. It's not possible because for many of this emerging technology, it's not included yet in this taxonomy. So we need to keep that more open mindset. And then the second, on the other hand, for corporates, for green tech corporates, I would suggest to be open to make your case, because for banks, when we evaluate a green opportunity, we look at taxonomy, but we also look at case by case. What is the life cycle emission of the project? What is the benefit? So if you're ready to leverage on the existing plenty of GHG emission reporting templates and standards calculation methodology to make your case, to show the expected, quantifiable environmental and emission benefit of the project, I think it would help to facilitate more of this institutional money towards the emerging part of the green tech company.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing I really want to ask you is, I know that you actually just finished a project with the URA in Hong Kong, yeah? Urban Renewal Associate, sorry, is it URA is authority, in terms of infrastructure taxonomy, right? It's a framework for infrastructure lending, financing.
Is there a green bond framework?
Green bond framework, okay. So in our paper, actually, we also have a chapter related to infrastructure. And we all know this is actually a very hot topic in Hong Kong. we need a lot of money, I mean, the government, and also a lot of our infrastructure needs to be kind of renewed. And that's actually linked to the point you mentioned, right? A lot of the green finance nowadays are still mainly focusing on concentrating in mitigation, right? But how about adaptation? So what's your view on that? And maybe you can share a little bit more on your framework as well, yeah?
So first of all, the URA has, we have been the green structuring advisor for their inaugural launch of the green bond framework, but actually there has not been a transaction out of the framework. But anyway, like, when it comes to the topic of climate change adaptation and resilience, that also goes to my previous point that this green finance market is far from perfect to fulfill, the objective of this market, which is to, facilitate more capital into new green technology, into building out climate resilience. I think, of course, different sources will say differently, but the majority of the institutions these days, they are contributing to climate change mitigation projects, and we seldom see maybe a few of the sovereigns or SSA or multi-development banks, they their green bond are going towards into climate change adaptation. So that is the facts of the markets. But at the same time, we do have very strong needs to finance these projects. Like when maybe we can talk about the potential financing model like PPP, but I think one thing is PPP is not new to Hong Kong or to China.
Rachel mentioned a lot about that.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So it's not new to Hong Kong. We have done that before to finance a lot of our major public infrastructure. But I think the question is for green tech or green projects, what is the right model among PPP for us to do that? And for some type of projects, maybe it's better for the private company to take ownership. Maybe it's better for them to just focus on the building and operation. So I think because PPP is such a tailor-made process. So just one recommendation when it comes to like climate change adaptation measures, which usually would involve very large-scale infrastructure. We talk about like the storm water storage underground or floodgates, or it really is a large-scale project. So for projects like this, I would really suggest, like we know that PPP is a good direction, but in order to encourage more private money and banks involvement in this project, we need to engage them early stage, because it is going to be a very lengthy discussion in tailor-making the PPP model for each project. There's no one size-fit-all model for financing these type of green projects.
Yep, thank you, Carmen. So, Greg, I think when Jason talked about some exciting stories, I know that you have some story to tell as well. So, so AMPD actually, maybe I'm wrong. I know AMPD is a company who want to get rid of diesel from construction. Right. Yeah. Would you just share your three stories, the funding story, your funding story, and your future plan?
Founding, funding, and future.
Yeah, three F's.
Okay.
Yeah.
First off, I'm Greg Patty. I have a group called Agave Partners. We do seed level financing for startups. AMPT was one of our seed level investments. We were the founding investor there. And you guys are talking about trillions and billions. Startups are usually happy with a few $100,000 and a couple million. Let's get this thing going and let's take some action. So that's the world that I live in. There's all kinds of goofy ideas, from seaweed farming to insect harvesting to powering the highways to electric vehicles. So I can tell you the story of a startup. And again, I'm on the board for AMPT from the very beginning in initial investment. AMPT is an 11-year-old startup, 11 years old. And the first 6 years were spent thrashing around with e-bikes and chargers for e-bikes and batteries and different size batteries. And eventually they came across a battery for home backup power. And unfortunately, didn't really hit the market. It was too big for homes, wasn't big enough for industry, and they burned through all their cash. Happens a lot to startups. It's called pivot, right? Oh crap, what do we do? So the guys were out looking for money. That's when I met them. And it's very difficult here in this part of the world if you've failed because you're seen as a failure. In the part of the world where I come from, failure equals experience. And it's especially value if somebody else paid for it, right? So I met with them. There was a great PowerPoint deck, as all startups have. And the more important thing was they had a customer that said, if you build this, we will buy it. And that's music to every investor's ears. So we gave them $500,000 and we built the product and we delivered it and they loved it and they ordered more. And so with the new order, we said, great, let's build a few of these things, sell some new customers, sell, deliver, reorder, rinse, repeat. It went on for a little while. Over time, we much more money. Growing businesses consume cash, so we put in more money. A lot of friends and family. There we go. I think we're okay. Continued. No, it isn't. Continued growing. From there, did a real Series A financing with real investors, big money. Again, grow, deliver, hire people, proceed. The first round where we were in, single-digit million valuation, and was many would understand as a down round because they had burned through their money and new investors. The first series of financing, single-digit millions, as usually is the case. Grow, get bigger. Series B financing, tens of millions raised, hundreds of millions in valuation. That's where we're at today. And along the way, our friends at HSBC came along with some venture debt, which helped give us that little boost to get us from the Series A to the Series B. And it's called venture debt. And so venture debt is pretty risky. And HSBC was one of the few banks that we found. So it's a shout out for you guys, where we found some real business people involved that could actually look down. And it's that part, Chris, of your report where you're big enough that you have some meat on your bones and you can see the money on the other side of the valley, and but you're still losing money, right? And no one is going to finance those losses to get to the other side of the valley. You guys did that, which is equity type risk. So there's warrants involved for the equity type risk. There's big cash involved. They're a bank. They made a lot of money. So yeah, it was expensive, but worth it. I guess the last time I heard those words was from a divorce attorney. But that's a whole nother story. The company grew, and so that takes us through the founding and the initial funding to where we are today, around 60 million in revenues. Next year will be well over 100. And now the futures. So like every startup, you need to have this strategy of land and expand, right? And so that's exactly what we do. We're now in 7 or 8 countries. We've got a industrial-sized battery system, which leveraged off the initial technology that the guys had. And we provide a large-scale battery for construction sites. And then very quickly what that is, these things are big, just physically to give you an idea, they're about the size of a sea container, like you might see out at the Hong Kong International Terminal, or you might see on the back of one of those trucks on the freeway, filled with batteries, drops in the middle of a construction site. And we do best in an environment called spiky power. And what spiky power is if there's a tower crane in the middle of a construction site, and there's one in the middle of all these sites, when they reach over to pick something up, there's a big draw on energy, on power, let's say. And if you looked at the demand curve, there would be a spike. We do best in that kind of environment. And so power is that spike. Energy, just for you guys who are not in it, power is the spikes, that draw, and energy is that steady as she goes, keep the lights on, keep the air conditioning going on, backup power for the backup energy for the building. So, so what we do is it's smaller than utility grade energy sources. It's larger than home, and it's that industrial area in the middle, which is today construction, but the future, that last F, port, Hong Kong terminal, where they pick up and they load the ships to a battery that looks like a tower crane on a construction site. Mining and tunneling, you know, the guys in the tunnel, they like to breathe air. And diesel generators that are always blah, 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 you know, blowing smoke, don't really work well in tunnels. And that's the thing that we're trying to initially in our target market get rid of in the world. Those tower cranes, those cranes that are moving things. Next to every one of those, you go out, you look, there is a diesel generator, and it's going blah, 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 blah. There's smoke coming out, and it's always on, waiting for the tower crane to ask it for power for that spike. So it's dirty, it's noisy, it's dumb because it's either on or it's off. That's it. Batteries are just completely the opposite. They're default off until you need power. They're quiet, and they are digital. You can control them. You can get the statistics on the usage and that sort of thing. That's the future.
Yeah, hello?
Want to use mine?
Sorry. Hello? Yeah, you're second up. Thank you. So I think it's a perfect example how even a small change can make a huge difference, right? In terms of how you know, the crane, right, the example that you use. And I think, again, just Chris mentioned about the lack of financial infrastructure in Hong Kong. That's actually one of the key conclusions in our paper. But it seems from your story, actually those financing options are available, right? But
the money came from outside of Hong Kong.
Oh, I see.
Series A and Series B.
Can you give us some advice? What can we do together here to make it better, more visible? I mean, or available for entrepreneurs to get access to these
financing.
Yeah.
So stop talking in trillions and start talking in hundreds of thousands and millions and more transactions. And I'm sorry, there's lots more transactions. Green bonds are for big projects. I'm talking a seaweed farm. Give me 300,000, I'll try it. Insect harvesting. So we need small, the ideas are going to come from where the rubber meets the road, and they're not going to come from, I don't know how many floors above here.
I mean, we're very, very proud of actually, you know, what we've done with you. Actually, I think we're, you know, one of the first, I think, homegrown climate tech companies in Hong Kong, right? I think that this is truly unique. I think this story is something we love to tell as well. But I think there, you know, there's room for all of it, right? The insect farms and the green bonds, because I think that's what the report that you publish is pointing out, because you have this sort of you know, you have the technologies that we need bonds that in the trillions to scale and deploy mature technologies, and then we have emerging technologies that need to get over the hump and need to get scaled, right? So I think there's room for both, and there needs to be actually.
I think there's a big role that the government can play here, if I can say, in that one of our largest problems in growing, we roll into a place and there's no rules. And there is no person on the other side of the desk that's willing to stick their neck out and sign and say, yes, you can install this. Like, what the hell, man? How are you going to sell something if there's no rules and the other guy isn't willing to work with you to create those rules? I told you this is where the rubber meets the road. This is how businesses grow. And so we need help on the other side. And we need very clear definition of what are the rules, very clear definition of how do you get a carbon credit, very clear. If you show me how to make money, I will make money. If you make it profitable to reduce carbon, there will be a line of guys with ideas out the door and an ocean of capital ready to invest. At the moment, it's seen as a problem. It's not seen as an opportunity. It needs to be seen as an opportunity.
Jenny, so sounds like we know what's the next research topic needs to be, right?
I think there's maybe just to chime in here a little bit, it's not all gloomy. I think in the past couple of years, the Hong Kong government has done a lot to support, the Hong Kong ecosystem. I mean, with the establishment of, Hong Kong IC, there's programs like Raise Plus, which are supporting a lot of the university-led innovations coming out of the local universities. So I think we are a big believer in this. We invest in it. We work with a lot of university professors, PhD students who are coming out of these local universities. We provide them, private financing, but at the same time, the government is also matching under, the new Raise Plus program. So I think it's to us, I mean, we think it's quite lucky for us to be in Hong Kong because we are very adaptable. I also tell the founders, a lot of founders feel like Hong Kong is a small market. Even if you win Hong Kong, you may not necessarily be able to raise Series B or later on financing. But I think it forces founders to also think about, okay, in order to be successful, you have to adapt, right? You either go into China to compete with the Chinese entrepreneurs, or you can also go to Southeast Asia, right? So a big trend that we're seeing is a lot of companies based out of Hong Kong, they're expanding beyond just Hong Kong market, right? They're going into Malaysia, Singapore. Singapore obviously is a natural market, but I think Malaysia is probably even more natural in terms of expansion. I mean, we have a headquarters there, so I can share a lot more if people are interested in the Malaysian market. But I feel like that's something that a lot of our Hong Kong founders that we back, they find a natural home either for their research staff or as a market for the product in Malaysia. So something just to chime in as well in terms of kind of venture debt and also seed financing. But I think there's still a gap here where the Hong Kong government is also trying to fill in that financing shortfall that we typically see.
One point. On a positive note, I do agree with Greg. There's a disconnect between like green tech VC or more impact investing scene and all the hype about green finance and green bond and all that. Because I come from impact investing field before, actually, so I've seen both sides of the spectrum. But there are cases that we have managed as a market to connect these two. Like shout out to our client, Hong Kong MC, the Hong Kong Mortgage Corp. Like one of them, the first social bond issued out of Asia. Actually, the use of proceeds was used to finance the guarantee scheme for SME, supporting employment generation and maintenance of employment during the COVID pandemic. So there were cases and structure that we have managed to done that before, and I think it would be a good, leaving this conversation a good positive note that hopefully we can replicate that for green tech.
Great. So I think we now we can start the Q&A with the floor. Not sure whether anyone have questions to our panelists. Hey, there's one over there.
Thanks. Hi, I come from construction sector. I'm an engineer my background is engineering, structural engineering. So my question is around the major materials we use for construction and how it links to the embodied carbon and the opportunities presents. So we come across like a lot of R&D and innovation going in this sector, right? For the construction materials and reducing the carbon footprint. Now, while working with some of these materials, we always face this challenge around how to use these materials in Hong Kong, given the regulatory, how the building regulations are in Hong Kong for, or let's say, not having a proper ecosystem for innovation. So from that perspective, I would like to hear from Greg on dealing with these challenges so that these materials can be, used as part of the construction, one. And secondly, from the financing perspective, how this opportunity is looked at for Hong Kong market.
So, Greg, I'm not sure whether you are feeling okay because I know you're energy expert, right? But building
Yeah, but
related.
I think the issue is more how do you get a new technology across when there's the guy on the other side of the table is like, I don't know, right? Yeah, and that's the real challenge. So I think what we did many times was you got to get one win somewhere, whether it's Hong Kong or Singapore or somewhere, and then you can get the rules either through the fire department or whatever department you need. And we wrote up rules, and we'd say, here's some rules. What do you think? And then basically just push on that. Or you do the startup way, which is I'm doing it. If you don't like it, tell me what's wrong. I'll fix that. We got some rules. Thank you very much. So that's basically the two ways that we've used in the past.
I mean, we looked at a company before, which exactly does what you mentioned. So they make some sort of concrete which can save water and also, it saves water when it mixes that concrete mix. So I think one of the challenges that we ask the entrepreneur is how do you scale up? So I think it's a very commonly used ingredients. Unfortunately, the cost differential is also not huge. In fact, there's no cost savings. I mean, obviously, it's good for the environment, but there's no cost savings to most people who use it, the vendors and also the construction companies. So I guess the question that you probably have to answer is this something that you can scale up in the short term, and where the business coming from? So I mentioned just now, it's a great product. It's good for the environment, but unfortunately, we live in a world where, profitability is also something that people look at, right? So you need to figure out a way to either make it cheaper so that there's a cost advantage, or you have a great stellar sales team that you can, open the market, sell to, environmental conscious customers, right? For example, like one of the customers of AMPD Chinacam is a very, environmental friendly companies who are willing to try new solutions, right? So you have to approach these companies first, and then once you have a blue chip name who's willing to use your product, not based on cost, but based on sustainability reasons, then I think back to what Greg mentioned is then you need to have a great sales team to keep selling your products to a certain scale where you can answer the VC questions, which is where a product is going in the next 2-3 years, right? Where's the market?
So, you mentioned cost quite a few times, and somewhere in there, it's how do you calculate that cost? So, for example, if the battery system and the diesel generator, it's probably, if you just look at today, it's probably cheaper to buy a diesel generator. But it's like the old HP printer deal where I'll give you the printer for $100 and then I'll sell you ink for the rest of your life at $300. And so I got a diesel generator, I got to pour gas into it, and I got to worry about a fire, and I got to worry about spilling it on the ground and a toxic waste cleanup and that sort of thing. And so if you look at it over a short period of time, it's actually cheaper with all the storage and the transport of the toxic materials and that sort of thing. So today, if you're selling to the government or some large corporations, and if they just look at the immediate cost, you're in trouble. You need to sell it differently. And we could work with our friends in government and our friends in big companies to actually better define what is the true cost. So you don't pat the purchasing guy on the back. Good job. The next year, like, find out your operating expenses are out of whack.
I think it depends on the technology that you have, right? You obviously have to find some sort of angle. And actually in Hong Kong, we get involved in a lot of discussions with on buildings in the real estate sector about decarbonization, right? It typically splits, I'm just being very rough about it, but it splits into a couple of discussions. One is that all right, is it in the embedded emissions in the building materials that we should tackle first, which is actually extremely difficult because, you know, concrete, cement is one of the hard to abate sectors, the hardest to abate sectors, right, given the nature of the material. Or is it in the operations of the buildings where we actually can have the low-hanging fruits and save emissions first, right? So I think that's a discussion. But then if you have a construction company or a major real estate developer or building owner that's actually has sustainability goals and can see a benefit in adapting these types of materials, that might be a way sort of forward, right? And then either, to Greg's point, the materials that you introduce either bring some sort of long-term life cycle cost benefit, as in there's a bit of a higher upfront cost, but longer term there's an efficiency gain of some sort, then you can bring the economic argument to bear. Or actually the cost is so minor that it doesn't actually, won't really get passed on to tenants or anywhere else, so that it's basically absorbed, right, into the overall bit, and then you gain the sustainability benefit with, you know, very little marginal additional cost, right? So I think those are the angles that you'll have to start exploring, and then venture debt aside, from a bank's perspective, we'll have to look at all of that and say, well, actually, if the cost is absorbed, or if there's a longer-term benefit, it can become a mainstream. There's mainstream adaptation. You have a buyer from a major real estate developer that's bankable, et cetera, all of that. Then you can find sort of the financing for it, right?
Thank you for your questions. And I think many of you may also have questions. Probably we need to save that for our networking. If I can try to conclude these panel discussions. When we start this paper, actually, we know that there are actually a lot of technologies, they are still emerging. They are still at the early stage, commercially not viable. We still do this because someone told me about the Say's law, which means supply may create demand. So we believe by providing information, more information of this landscape, this information itself may help us to, and also a lot of these business activities may help us to create a demand that may ultimately help us to stimulate the finance. Yeah, and to be honest, when Chris and I work together, and also with the GFA colleagues together, we, after all these 1 year of hard work, we still believe this is actually a kind of a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. And the cost of not taking action actually could be even costly. If you look at what's happening in LA, we just can't imagine, right? So, and the more we invest with our foresight, I think the less we'll regret with our hindsight, right? So hopefully today you have something to take back. And it could be hopefully, and also wish you a very good, prosperous 2025 as well. May I invite all of us to put your hands together for our panelists for the sharing. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much to our esteemed panelists and the speakers. And as we are going to conclude our event, may I now invite Ms. Jenny Lee, the Deputy Secretary General at Hong Kong GFA, to deliver her closing remarks.
Okay, look, I just want to keep it very brief. This is just one working group within GFA. We have 5 working groups, 10 work streams. This is all very driven by passionate Kavak industry experts. So, you know, if you are interested in coming on board, sharing some insights, expertise, please feel free to reach out to the Secretariat. I would also like to thank Invest Hong Kong, ADB, AECOM, KPMG, and all our esteemed panelists for actually putting this together, because without this collaboration, cooperation, and partnership, we would not be able to drive and lead this forward. And also not forgetting our Secretariat team, Phoebe and Tina, for all their hard work in terms of making this happen. So thank you. Please stay behind for some networking drinks. I encourage you to perhaps talk to some of the panelists. If you're too shy to ask questions in front of everybody, hopefully they'll be around for a few moments to spend some time with you. So thank you.